inviting me to sit with you today. I'm very pleased that there's now increasing recognition of the vulnerability of our grid and our country to EMP. I've been concerned about this a number of years. Dr. Graham is here, who has chaired the commission that my legislation set up in '01. And this is probably one of the longest-serving commissions on the Hill. And hopefully it will be serving for a while yet because the job is not done. If an EMP attack were vigorous enough, and this is kind of tough because it's said that if it's too good to be true, it's probably not true. And in this case, if it's too bad to be true, it's probably not true. But in this case, I'm sorry to say, it could be true. If the EMP laydown were vigorous enough, you could find yourself in a world that essentially the only person you could talk to is the person next to you, unless you were a ham operator with a vacuum tube set, which is 1,000,000 times less susceptible. And the only way you could go anywhere is to walk, unless you were the proud owner of an Etzel or similar vintage automobile with coil and distributor. And of course, if you do not have electricity, you do not have anything in our world. Our very vulnerability invites attack, and it doesn't have to be a nation state. Anybody who can get a tramp steamer, buy a Scud launcher for $100,000 with a crude nuclear weapon, could do an EMP laydown, not countrywide, but certainly over New England. And by the way, if you miss your target by 100 miles, it's as good as a bullseye. So this would obviously be the most asymmetric attack that would be launched against us. And my wife says that I shouldn't talk about this because I'm giving these people ideas, But, it's in all of their literature. It's in all of their war games. Not 1 out of 50 Americans may know about EMP, but I will assure you that 100% of our potential enemies know all about EMP. So thank you very much for your vision in holding this hearing, and thank you for inviting me to be with you.
Other members of the subcommittee are reminded that under committee rules, opening statements may be submitted for the record. I welcome our first panel of witnesses today. We are joined by a distinguished panel of private sector witnesses. Dr. William Graham is the chairman of the Commission to Assess the Threat to the United States from an Electromagnetic Pulse, also known as the EMP Commission. Mr. Fabro is the president and chief security scientist of Lofty Perch. Mr. Michael Asante is the chief security officer of the North America Electric Reliability Corporation, also known as NERC. And Mr. Steve Nauman is the vice president of wholesale markets at Exelon Corporation. Mr. Nauman is providing testimony on behalf of the Electric Industry Association, Edison Electric Institute, and the Electric Power Supply Association. Just to give you an idea about the importance of this topic, we received a number of statements for the record. I have made these statements available to the members ahead of time, but ask unanimous consent that the following statements be included into the record. The National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, Dr. Bill Rodasky, president of Meditech, and John Kapperman, Meditech consultant, George Anderson and Gail Nordling of Imprimus, Mike Frankel, executive director of the EMP Commission, Joe Weiss, Applied Control Solutions, and Curtis Bernbach, president of Advanced Fusion Systems. Hearing no objection, then it's so ordered. In the interest of time, I will ask that each of you provide a brief biography of your work without objection. The witnesses' full statements will be inserted in the record. I now ask you to introduce yourself and summarize your testimony for 5 minutes, beginning with Dr. Graham.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, distinguished members of the committee, for the opportunity to testify today on the matter of the nuclear electromagnetic pulse threat to to the United States, to our forces, our allies, and our friends worldwide. By way of background, I'm an electrical engineer and a physicist who first served as a junior officer in the Air Force in 1962 and encountered the EMP problem as a great surprise to all of us as a result of the high-altitude test series that the U.S. conducted over the Pacific, primarily Johnston Island, at that time. I've continued to work on the problem through most of my career, now some 45 years, including as, among other things, the director of the Office of Science and Technology Policy in the Executive Office of the President and the science advisor to President Reagan during his second term. Several potential adversaries have or can acquire the capability to attack the United States with high-altitude nuclear weapon-generated electromagnetic pulse. In fact, a determined adversary can achieve an EMP attack capability without having a high level of technical sophistication. EMP is one of a small number of threats that can hold our society at risk of catastrophic consequences. EMP will cover a wide geographic region within line of sight of a nuclear weapon explosion. It has the capability to produce significant damage to critical infrastructures and thus the very fabric of U.S. society, as well as the ability of the U.S. Western nations to project influence and military power. The common element that can produce such an impact from EMP is primarily electronics, so pervasive in all aspects of our society and military, coupled with critical infrastructures. An example of this and the increase in potential vulnerability can be seen in the smart grid, where considerable interest and effort is being made in adding electronics to our electric distribution grid for efficiency, effectiveness, and safety. But it can undermine that grid if it's not designed properly. This EMP impact is asymmetric in relation to our potential adversaries who are not so dependent on modern electronics. The current vulnerability of our critical infrastructure can both invite and reward attack if not corrected. Correction is feasible and well within the nation's means and resources to accomplish, and in fact, with proper design of protection for both physical and cyber attack, which should be integrated in our electrical distribution and other critical infrastructure systems, I believe we can actually work to a net economic benefit because of the improved reliability and performance that we'll achieve with these critical infrastructures. However, there is an implicit invitation in the fact that the U.S. is vulnerable in this area to adversaries. We know that geomagnetic storms will occur, and they will damage electric power distribution systems. The question is not if, but when. Concerning EMP, the logic of the position is upside down. If often made statements about it being improbable. By ignoring large-scale catastrophic EMP vulnerabilities, we invite such attacks on our infrastructure by adversaries who seek to attack us where we are weak, not where we're strong, and to take advantage of that vulnerability. We have prepared two unclassified reports, one on critical national infrastructures and an executive oversight report by the Commission, I submit those to you as well, Madam Chairman. And I'd like to say then, while much of our discussion is contained in those, in conclusion, I'd say that I would like to go on the record as supporting H.R. 2195, the bill to amend the Federal Power Act to provide additional authorities to adequately protect the electrical infrastructure against cyber attack and for other purposes. And at the same time, I would like to strongly recommend that very large-scale electromagnetic threats to the critical infrastructure, both EMP and naturally occurring, be addressed explicitly in the bill in a manner comparable to and parallel with the cyber threats now contained in the bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Graham. Chairwoman Clark had to go and cast votes in a markup. She'll return shortly. Mr. Faber.